If you currently sell on Amazon or you're thinking about starting your own Amazon FBA business, you are probably rightly concerned about all of the tariff news that has been going on over the past couple of weeks. So in this video, I want to try and clear things up, as this is certainly a massive issue for some sellers and for other sellers not so much. So in this video, we're going to discuss US sellers, UK sellers selling in the US, and UK sellers selling in the UK, and the potential impact that these tariffs could have, and also what you could potentially do about them as well. And then finally, I'm going to show you the one reason why I really don't think that UK sellers have to worry about this. So firstly, what are tariffs and why is Trump using them? I'm sure most of you guys already know this, but just very, very quickly. In a growing trade war, US President Donald Trump has placed tariffs of up to 145% on Chinese goods. He argues that tariffs will boost US manufacturing and protect jobs. Now, I don't want this video to end up being a debate about whether tariffs are good or bad or whether they can help him achieve his objectives. I just want to focus on that they're actually happening at the moment and what we can do about it and potentially the impact of them. Tariffs are taxes charged on goods bought from other countries. Typically, they are a percentage of a product's value. The 10% tariff on goods from most nations mean a $10 product would have a $1 tax on top, taking the total cost to $11. The 145% charge on some Chinese goods would take the cost of a $10 product to $24.50. So we're talking about the sourcing cost, not your selling price on Amazon. These are the sourcing costs when you're buying goods from China. Companies that bring foreign goods into the US have to pay the tax to the government. They may pass some or all of the increased cost on to the customers, which we will wait to see how that plays out. And if you go to the Fulfillment by Amazon Reddit, there is post after post after post about tariff concerns at the moment. As if you are a US seller or a UK seller or any other country but sell on the US marketplace, then it is a massive issue. And there is every chance it's going to kill a large number of FBA businesses that rely on US sales. And if we take this one post as an example, and anyone else feeling the tariff pinch from sourcing from China, I'm currently running a 7-figure Amazon brand and recently grew a second account to 5 figures a month, both heavily reliant on Chinese suppliers, as most Amazon FBA businesses are. With tariffs still in play, and I think that's one of the most important takeaways from this video, this is an extremely fluid situation. So any changes you make at the moment should be viewed with both short-term and long-term, as the tariffs could change by the time I publish this video. This is how ridiculous the situation is. It's getting harder to stay lean without eating into margins. We've optimized our PPC, which most sellers would have done anyway. We've tightened up on logistics. Again, only marginal savings, but I'm wondering how other sellers are handling this. Are you just absorbing the tariff costs by reducing your profit margins? Are you increasing your price and passing them on to customers? Or are you shifting suppliers to other countries? So I've got some notes off to the side here for US sellers specifically, or UK sellers selling in the US. And these are some of the ideas that you may want to think about for your Amazon FBA business. So the first point is, I've got just take the hit for now. Like I said, this is a very fluid situation. So I wouldn't be looking to hike my price straight away. I'd probably say, I'm just going to keep my price as it is, maintain my ranks, maintain selling at the consistent sales rate, as consistent sales velocity, and just see how this plays out for a few more weeks, as things could change very, very quickly. Another thing you could do is, if you are running low on inventory, instead of placing a massive bulk order, speak to your supplier about maybe placing more frequent, smaller, minimum order quantity orders. So instead of ordering 1,000 units, maybe order 200 or 300 units and then another 200 or 300 units in 3 or 4 weeks, rather than doing it every 2 or 3 months. And that way, if the tariffs do change, and which is very likely, you've not just committed to 1,000 units at the huge tariff rate, you can then order the future units at hopefully lower rates. You can try and reduce other costs, as this guy's highlighted, with PPC, packaging costs, logistics, but I think there's probably minimal savings to be had there. You can look into sourcing from lower tariff countries, but again, how long that will take you to find a supplier, go through the sample process and all of that. The tariffs are likely to change a massive amount before you actually get in a position to order from another country, but it's certainly something you can start looking into. Increase the price if possible. If you don't know the ceiling price of your product, that's certainly something you could experiment with at the moment. And also monitor your niche to see if other sellers start putting up their price as well. As if everyone puts up their price, then you can get away with it. But if only some sellers put up their price and some don't, then it's going to be a big, big problem. And on the next tab, I'm going to show you exactly why that is a huge risk. Then finally, consider other Amazon marketplaces. So if you currently sell on Amazon US, that is the main, I guess, victim of these tariffs. There are other Amazon marketplaces that you may want to consider selling on. So those are just some points for US sellers. Now, my big concern with this, especially for US sellers or UK sellers selling in the US, is this whole idea from Trump is to try to do what's best for the US. But I think what will happen is, as this guy on this tweet or X post talks about, is that the Chinese sellers are going to do everything they can to avoid these tariffs. So genuine US sellers or maybe UK sellers that import into the US trying to do things by the book, who are probably going to have to increase their price long term if these tariffs aren't sorted. The Chinese sellers are probably going to have an even greater advantage as they appear to be more willing to do things maybe they shouldn't be doing. So this is a great post here, and he's listed 12 different ways that Chinese sellers on Amazon are going to cheat and lie to the US government to avoid tariffs. And remember, there's very little blowback for a Chinese seller. It's not as if the US can go after a Chinese factory. It's just not going to happen. Whereas if you're a US importer and you underdeclare or do something wrong, then absolutely the US can come after you. So I'm not going to read them all, but some examples are underdeclaring the value of goods. So if you're buying from a Chinese factory and you've got your invoice and you're paying $6 per unit, and then a Chinese factory that's importing themselves, they might say, well, our cost of goods is only $2 because we make them ourselves. And they could probably actually get away with that argument. So straight away, they've got a huge advantage if you're paying 145% tariff on $6 versus $2. Other things they can do is misclassification of products. So they have different classification codes depending on the product, what the tariff would actually be. Transshipment through third countries. It's totally illegal to try and avoid the tariffs importing directly from China. You go through other countries. Exploiting of the de minimis exemption, which is a threshold below which tariffs don't apply. So you could break shipments up and stuff like that. So there's 12 different ways this guy's had listed here that potentially Chinese sellers could basically get an advantage over US sellers or other non-Chinese sellers selling in the US as well. So I'll put a link to this in the description. Now for UK sellers, things are slightly different. Well, actually, they're very, very different. If you're a UK seller selling on the US, you have all of the same concerns that I've just gone through. But if you're a UK seller selling on the UK, you probably don't realize this, but you already pay tariffs. These are your customs duties. So these are tariffs on goods imported into the UK. And to give you an example, if we just look through the commodity codes and do a lookup, let's put in a product. So if we say an umbrella, let's say you're going to start selling umbrellas via FBA. Let's take a look at this commodity. If we scroll down, we can see that umbrellas are subject to 20% VAT, which is fairly standard, and the third country duty, which is basically a tariff, is 4%. So lots of products that we already import into the UK are subject to tariffs, but they don't change, or they're not subject to these massive increases that US sellers or UK sellers in the US are feeling from what Trump has done. But there are tariffs that exist. Now, the reason I believe you don't have to worry about this as a UK seller is the UK. Actually, I'll come back to that in a moment. I've got a couple more things I want to go through first. At the end of this video, I'm going to tell you why I really don't believe you need to worry about UK putting huge tariffs on China. So there are some, although you won't have what I'll call direct costs from these tariffs. So we're not going to suddenly see big tariffs on imports from China if you're selling it in the UK. There are potential indirect costs, and we don't know whether these costs are going to go up or down. So some of the ones I've got noted are the production costs. So we don't know if Chinese factories are going to become more competitive because they're chasing after less business, or whether they become more expensive. And the same with raw material costs. We don't know whether they're going to go up or down. So it's very hard to predict those. And the same applies to freight costs. If less people are importing goods, our freight costs are going to go up or down. And we've also got exchange rate volatility as well. If anyone's been following the markets recently, and if we go to the GBP versus the USD, actually, since Trump came to power, since his inauguration in January, if we just measure this is GBP versus the US dollar. So this was the 10th or 13th of January, mid-January. And if we measure that up, so GBP is up just under 10% against the dollar, from $1.21 to $1.32 to the pound. Which means if you're currently sourcing from China and your supplier hasn't changed your unit cost, it's 10% cheaper for you to source from China at the moment. And if you live in the UK, you may not agree with this, but from an outside perspective, we're actually seen as quite stable at the moment compared to places like the US, and that's why the GBP has gained some strength as the US is a lot more volatile. So these are some of the indirect impacts we may feel from these tariffs, even if we're not going to see big tariffs in the UK on Chinese imports. And this for me is why I don't think we need to worry in the UK about the UK government suddenly putting huge tariffs on China. The UK is a service industry. About 80% of our GDP comes from services. So we deindustrialized many, many years ago. And we also have the highest energy costs in the Western world. So Trump's theory is to get manufacturing back on shore in the US. They can have low energy costs in the US. They've got the natural resources to do that. In the UK, we can't do that. There's no way we can become a manufacturing hub again with these energy costs. So there'd be no benefit really to the UK to put huge tariffs on imports from China. So I think this, if we just go through this, the International Industrial Electricity Price Comparison, UK industrial electricity prices at 25p per kilowatt hour are the highest of the 28 countries covered by this report. UK prices are some 4 times those in the US, 2.6 times those of Korea, and 46% higher than the IEA median, which is all 28 countries in this report. And I'm not sure how cheap electricity is in China, but I'm sure it is very, very cheap. So there's no way the UK is going to suddenly have the same change in tact and say we're going to become a manufacturing hub again. So we're going to put massive tariffs on where we rely on, basically, which is importing from China. And that's reflected in our car tariffs. So pretty much Europe and the US, they all tax EVs from China. And the UK doesn't. The UK government know that we need to have low costs when we're importing because all our manufacturing is exported and we import from China. So that is my current understanding of the situation. If you're a US seller selling in the US or a UK seller selling in the US, honestly, I'm gutted for you. I feel so sorry for what you're going through. Hopefully things are resolved sooner than later. If you're a UK seller selling in the UK, I don't think we're going to see any big changes to tariffs. If any, there may be some indirect impacts on costs, but we don't know whether they're going to go up or down. So I don't really have any concerns for us UK sellers. So if you are looking to start selling on Amazon UK and you want to find your first product, I'm going to pop up a video now to show you how to find your first product in less than 5 minutes, and I'll see you over there.